The digital storefront lists a 5-year-old game at an eye-watering $70, but at a used game shop, you grab a physical copy for $20. For decades, that was the standard life cycle of a release. A physical cartridge or disc meant that you owned a tangible good, one that you could lend to a friend, trade in, or sell. This created a massive, organic secondary market of used games. That aftermarket did a lot of heavy lifting for the consumer. When publishers wanted to sell a new copy of a game, they were forced to compete with the millions of used copies of their own product already in circulation. This naturally drove prices down over time. A physical disc acts as a hard limit on publisher pricing power. It provides a vital economic check that prevents a single storefront from dictating exactly what a game is worth. Over the last generation of consoles, the industry has aggressively phased out the disc drive. The messaging around this shift focuses entirely on aesthetics and convenience, a sleek, modern leap forward that saves you from getting off the couch. But look at the math, and a different motive appears. When you remove the disk drive, you completely eliminate the secondary market. Within a closed console ecosystem, that removes the only form of price competition that exists. Gamers bought into a narrative of technological convenience, and in exchange, they quietly handed over their best piece of economic leverage. To understand why digital prices stay high even as games age, we have to look at how supply is manipulated. When a corporation intentionally restricts the availability of a product to inflate its value, they are utilizing a strategy known as artificial scarcity. This strategy defined the 20th century diamond market. By locking away massive reserves and controlling exactly how many stones entered circulation, the De Beers cartel created high baseline prices for a commodity that wasn't actually rare. Console manufacturers are running this same play. By phasing out physical media, they are restricting the supply of physical ownership rights to force players into a marketplace where the platform holder has total control over every transaction. This graph breaks down exactly how that wealth moves. When physical discs exist in a market, natural supply and demand find an equilibrium point. The green area above that price line represents the consumer surplus, the total economic value that buyers get from finding a game at a price lower than their maximum budget. Watch what happens when you remove the secondary market. By eliminating used games, the platform pulls the supply line backward into an artificially restricted state. That massive green triangle of consumer value shrinks rapidly. But that wealth doesn't vanish. The blue area below the price point, the producer surplus, expands upward, absorbing the exact value the consumer lost. What is left behind is a gap called deadweight loss, representing total inefficiency and lost value to the market as a whole. Phasing out the disk drive has nothing to do with saving space on your TV stand.
It is a calculated, mathematical transfer of wealth from the gamer's wallet directly to the platform's bottom line. You might wonder how two massive, fiercely competitive tech giants managed to execute this exact same strategy at the exact same time without secretly conspiring to rig the market. The answer lies in a concept called conscious parallelism. This happens in markets dominated by a tiny handful of major players, a tight oligopoly, where companies end up mirroring each other's behavior entirely out in the open. Explicit collusion is unnecessary because both firms are staring at identical mathematical incentives. If one platform decides to eliminate its aftermarket and lock down its pricing, the competitor finds it incredibly profitable and virtually risk-free to follow suit. Antitrust regulators struggle to intervene here because when market capture benefits every major player so clearly, competitors will naturally march in lockstep to squeeze the consumer. Once that digital exclusivity is established, publishers hold absolute, uncheckable pricing power over their storefronts. There is no longer a cheaper alternative sitting on a shelf to keep them honest. In a physical market, buying a game grants you the bundle of rights. This is a legal concept, meaning you hold durable, residual control over your property, including the right to resell it, lend it, or preserve it on a shelf for decades. This chart breaks down the stark difference in market equilibriums between physical and digital formats. Looking closely at the consumer status and supply nature rows, we see that digital purchases replace a real market supply with artificial restrictions. You aren't securing a bundle of rights. You are signing up for a highly restrictive, revocable license masquerading as ownership. The terms of that digital license carry immediate risks. They face arbitrary region locking, suddenly delisted from the store, or rendered completely unplayable the moment a platform decides to shut down its authentication servers. When you pay $70 for a modern digital release, you are no longer buying property. You are paying a premium to rent temporary permission to play a game. This leads to the final, long-term phase of the strategy, switching costs. As you accumulate a massive library of purely digital titles tied to a single account, the financial penalty for ever leaving that specific brand's ecosystem becomes overwhelmingly high. Once you are completely locked in and abandoning your library is unthinkable, the platforms have total leverage. They can quietly raise prices by forcing you into mandatory subscription tiers just to access basic features, all while offering the consumer fewer genuine discounts. The entire economic maneuver, from the slow death of the disc drive to the rise of the digital-only console, was pitched to the public as the natural evolution of gaming. The digital squeeze illustrates how monopoly tactics function. Gamers paid for the convenience of a download, while the oligopoly secured total control over the marketplace.